Hello and welcome to my guide to gold making with glyphs in Warlords of Draenor patch 6.0.3, though it's probably going to be the same for every other patch. Now first of all, I'm just going to assume that you know the basics when it comes to inscription. If you don't, go read, say, the, Wowhead Guide to Inscription. It'll teach you really what's going on. So in this guide, I'm just going to show my setup with TSM, how I've got that stuff configured, how that helps me with the auctions, and then I'll just sort of run through an example of me making and, doing all that with a bunch of glyphs. So first of all, the thing to mainly show off is just TSM, because that's, of course, what does most of the work. So here's my group of glyphs. Now, this setup here, and with all, that contains all the glyphs sorted by class, is actually from Elvine's website. He's a streamer, and he provides that as a very, very handy resource on his website. All you need to do is make a group of glyphs, go into management, then I'll put a link to that in the description, and then you go to import export, put in the import string, so you just, copy, paste that in, then hit OK, and all of these will appear, and it'll all be lovely and populated with glyphs, which is pretty great. I should not have hit escape there. Anyway, let's go back to TSM and have a look at our operations. So here is the main operation window. I've got a few different ones here. So first of all, we've got auctioning, crafting, mailing. These are all pretty much self-explanatory. Auctioning dictates what happens when I'm trying to sell glyphs. Crafting dictates when I make glyphs, and I'll show you crafting in a bit. And then mailing dictates just sending them to the right character, which is sort of handy. The main one is probably auctioning, so if we look in here and we go to post, I sell them on 24 hours, post cap of 2, with a stack size of 1, because no one really buys stacks of 2 glyphs. Then in terms of my price settings, I actually should... Whoa, I made a mistake there. This should be 94%. And that's just what I set the bid percentage to. By default, I think it's 95%, and if you set it to like anything below that, just a little bit, then it'll help you appear a little bit higher in the menus. Now, not the menus, like in the search of the auction house. Now, in terms of minimum price, I've been experimenting with this, so this might not be perfect, but I'm just taking the crafting price, and I need to talk about crafting in a bit in terms of price sources. I'm just taking that plus 5 gold. Which is fine. Then in terms of the maximum price, just 250% DB market, and the normal price is 180% DB market. If the price is below the minimum, I just post it normal. If it's above the maximum, I just post it normal. Cancel stuff, my cancel stuff right now is just like at its default, which is fine, though I should probably set this to something a bit less. Anyway, and then reset is not something that I'm using. I don't really know why that was enabled. So that's what's going on there. Next, I will show you my other operations, so let's have a look at crafting. Basically, I craft them if I can make a profit of 20 gold, and that's basically all you have to do for crafting. And then, for mailing, if we go down here, view operation, this is just my bank character. You need to spell that name correctly, or else it'll send it to someone else's. And that's what I do there, which is fine. Now, I do need to talk a little bit about crafting. One of the things which I'm sure you know about Inscription is that there are many different kinds of inks, but what you can do is take the Warbinder's ink, which you make in Warlords of Draenor, which is this stuff, and you can trade it in for other kinds of ink at, at the various sellers, or the ink trader, even in Stormwind, or Dalaran, or Orgrimmar if you're the Horde. Now, that's fine, but when TSM crafting is looking at, say, let's have a look at some other glyph. This glyph here, which uses ethereal ink, it will be thinking, right, well, how do I make an ethereal ink? You make it with nether pigment, which obviously we're not going to be doing because no one's got the time to manage all that stuff. So what I do is I go into TSM, I go into crafting, I then go into materials, then I type in ink, which will bring up all of the various kinds of ink. And you can see that all of my uncommon inks are all the same price in terms of the material price. Now that's because here is the pricing formula for Blackfallow ink. This is from a forum post on stormspire.net. Links to all that stuff will be in the description. Many thanks to the person who actually came up with that. Or maybe it was Elvine's website. Actually, no, I think this was Elvine's. 2 fantastic resources, by the way, that you should absolutely check out on a regular basis. 2 very good communities. Anyway, so this is assuming you're using WoW Auction and then also AuctionDB. Now, you do need to have your sources set up right, and I'm assuming that you're using TradeSkillMaster with the desktop application and therefore have all of those sources. If you don't, go on to TradeSkillMaster.com, download the add-on, download the application, and read some of the guides and things that they have linked over there. It's very helpful. And by the way, just for this guide in general, I am assuming you have sort of read some, at least primer material for, just for TradeSkillMaster. Just going over the basics in every TSM video would be a little bit insane. So that's what I've done there. Now this means that if I'm making something with Jadefire ink, because in reality I will just be trading Warbinder's ink for Jadefire ink, it's all going to be the same price. So in every single kind of ink, I've just pasted in the price formula for Warbinder's ink, which is all quite handy. Now that's my main TSM setup covered. So what happens when we make glyphs? Well, I actually, just for the sake of things being easy, I'll bring up TSM Destroying. I normally just use a macro for this. There we go, TSM Destroying. How do I bring you up? I think I've screwed it. I'm just going to use my macro here, which is just your sort of standard milling macro, which is nice. I'll probably link to that or make a paste bin of it that I'll put in the description of the video. If I don't, then shout at me until I do. So there you go, I'm just doing my milling, which is fine. This is more the example part of the video now. So let's have a look here at what I can make. Let's go right up to the top, and I can make 238 Warbinder's ink. I do have some more herbs to process, but right now I'm just going to process a few, use some YouTube magic to cut ahead, and we'll continue on from there. Alright, me from the future here, I actually forgot to show you one thing. This is how you essentially just buy things cheap. Now, there's two kinds of searches that you can do when you're just searching for materials. Of course, you can just use something like Auctionator, which is another add-on that I have over here, but TradeSkillMaster has got its shopping module, and one of the things that you can do is search for items. So I could just search for Warbinder's ink normally, or I could go into Destroy mode. Now, this is pretty cool, and I'll show you what it does. It essentially will search for Warbinder's ink itself, but then anything that can be turned into Warbinder's ink. So it's going to go through and actually bring up all of the herbs that I could possibly want, and then of course I can search them by, or not search them, order them by price per target item. So I can now see that the cheapest way to get Warbinder's ink is to buy Talador orchids. Now you can use this for many other things. Just for an example, if I wanted Hypnotic Dust, it will then search through loads of Cataclysm green bits of gear and try to find me things that will give me, Hypnotic Dust at a rate that's cheaper than 13 gold. Okay then, so that's about enough waiting, and I've got enough ink to at least craft some stuff. So, how do we do crafting in TradeSkillMaster? Well, as you remember, I set up my crafting operations, which said that... Did I show you crafting? I'll just double check, in case I didn't. Yes, if you go to glyphs, blah blah blah, operations, crafting, it just makes anything with a profit of 20g currently. Which is fine. I could probably drop that down to 10, honestly, but let's just put it to 15, hit OK, and continue. So, we then, on our little TSM crafting thing, click on TSM groups. Then we select what group we want to do crafting for. In this case, it's going to be glyphs. Then you just click restock selected groups. And here is what it brings up. So here's the craft queue. This is sorted by profit. So here's an example. The glyph of floating butterfly will sell for a profit of 87 gold, which I very much like the idea of. So here's the big list of things that I need to craft. Obviously, I need to make a lot more ink to craft everything, but this will be enough for now. And here's all the materials that I need. As you can see, though, I don't really have, enough materials. But that's fine. What we're going to do is trade in the Warbinder's inks. Let's see, just how many do I have? Yeah, I've got 63, so I'm going to trade these in for other kinds of ink. This involves going to Stormwind, so let's hop over there. Okay, so here I am in Stormwind. Now, just on my way to the glyph place, it's worth talking about another part of TSM. Actually, I've arrived here pretty quick. Anyway, so what we're going to be using is gathering. So when we go into TSM groups, here's the sort of view that we left off at, where we've made our craft queue. But now, well, it would be nice if we could perhaps automate buying all of these various inks, because it's kind of confusing at doing it by yourself. The good news is TSM will do that for you. Just click on the gather button, which will bring up the TSM gathering menu thingy, which appears over here. It says what character, then what profession, so we're going to be doing the inscription stuff for my main character. Then you just click start gathering, and here is the list of all the various things that we need. So if I click on this vendor, I'm now talking to him, yeah, this is the one that sells everything. Then I just click buy vendor items. We click that. Now I don't have enough gold to buy, or enough, Warbinder's ink to trade in for everything that's here. But as you can see, it successfully bought a whole bunch of things that I need. So if I go back to, I'll just close gathering because that's all my Warbinder's ink spent. When we go back to crafting, you can see I've now got enough materials to make a whole bunch of items, so it's time to get crafting. Now, previously, I think a few of these were green anyway. Green, of course, signifies that they can be crafted. That's just because they were the Warbinder's ink recipes. Of course, like right now, for an example, I'm crafting some Moonglow ink stuff, and yeah, that's just how this goes. Overall, it's a very easy process that essentially, like, it doesn't automate everything, right? It's still within Blizzard's term of service. Obviously, like, you're still doing a lot of user input, but it certainly takes a lot of the hard thought out of things. Honestly, the glyph market, without the help of add-ons, in my opinion, is impossible to do. I mean, sure, it's technically possible, but damn, if you're selling hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of items, and I just don't think it's really feasible to do that by yourself. And even things like Auctioneer, I still don't think really do enough when it comes to glyphs, and TradeSkillMaster really is the only option. I suppose I'm also still sort of glad that Inscription hasn't had a lot of its sort of depth gutted out, like some of the other professions, especially alchemy and like jewel crafting. I'm a little bit sad about all the daily cooldown stuff and how that's affected them. Same with enchanting, kind of sucks, but Inscription is kind of its good old self, really, which is quite nice. Anyway, so now that that's been done, it's time to head over to the mailbox, and we open up TSM mailing, which is just a part of TSM. Then we click on groups, then you just select glyphs, and then just hit mail selected groups. And all that stuff that I did in TSM mailing has just sent that off to my auctioning character. So now I'm just going to relog and head onto that character and sell these. Alright then, so here I am on the auctioning character in Stormshield. It's time to pick up the stuff that I made on my crafting alt and then throw it up on the auction house. Of course, TradeSkillMaster is going to help us greatly in doing so. So I'll click here. I've got a few little crappy auctions that sold. Yeah, for an example, I like just random dagger that I sold for 20g. Basically, there's a bunch of stuff that, like transmog items you sort of get from, there we go, that's all the items that I crafted. Some transmog items you get from the salvage things, which I've just been kind of selling if it's, I don't know, it's probably not worth it. Anyway, let's get back on to glyphs. So here we are, go to TSM auctioning. Right now, because glyphs are the only thing that I'm really worrying about here, we're just going to click on glyphs, and we're going to do a post scan. Now the post scan will scan through all the glyphs that are in my bag, and it will try to post them on the auction house. So you can see, most of them are posting, they're going to be undercutting the competition, and making a solid amount of gold. Now as far as glyphs go, they're not selling as much as they were at the very start of the expansion, but they're still selling in a steady enough fashion. Really, glyphs are something that people are always going to need, so it's a fair enough market to go into. Now, it's costing me roughly 10 gold a glyph, so you can see here there's 16 gold, there's 7 gold, there's 8 gold, you know, decent profits there. It's not massive. This is one of those markets that's more about selling loads and loads and loads of items, rather than just selling like one a day at very high profit. Now that suits some people, it doesn't suit other people. With the glyph market, generally it's one of the ones you do need to babysit a little bit more, so you sort of would want to just be, you know, scanning and cancelling and reposting maybe 2 or 3 times a day. So it really depends whether that's something that you're cool with fitting into your schedule. Because I do a lot of auctioning anyway, it just makes sense. And it's just like, there's so many methods that will produce items which you just sort of put into your regular posting and reposting schedule that, in my opinion, just add as many methods as you can until you feel like you're spending enough time goal making. So now I'm just picking up a bunch of stuff from the bank. I'm going to go and put that back in the auction house. See my transmog guide if you want to learn more about that. But that's really it for this video. Just a quick little overview of how I'm doing Inscription in Warlords of Draenor. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.